Welcome to Meet Me at the Wall. A podcast exploring author Anne Goodwin's time-traveling journey after discovering hundreds of letters written to her grandmother over a century ago. We visit the space where fact meets fiction, truth fosters imagination, and delve into the past while keeping an eye on how lessons from history affect us today and even tomorrow. Well, good morning, Anne.
Good morning, Doug. Good morning, Betsy.
Hey, Betsy.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
I appreciate moving the date around here. We're all about being flexible. But today, we are so excited because we get to speak with Mr. John Gurda, who is a Milwaukee-born writer and historian, about just what he does and really about World War II era, because that's where we are right now. In fact, I think we're going to actually make this into 2 episodes kind of in this World War II area. So we're going to start today with not a sketch, but a letter that was written to Fleur from Shiny right in the middle of World War II.
This is a letter from Shiny to Flo Bell, dated December 12, 1941. This is one of her typewritten letters, but there was a handwritten note at the top of the page that I'd like to start with. Let's start saving our letters for the duration. Our children might like some such things. We are living in such an amazing period. Do you think this is a crazy idea? Don't outdo me in writing for posterity. And then the letter begins, Dearest Flo Bell, I thought of you as air raid warnings descended upon New York and news of enemy planes came in over the radio. Because, like our trips to the stores when the stock market crashed and Frank was in the hospital, you'll never forget. On Tuesday, I didn't have the radio on. Caught an afternoon train into town, ready for a night out. We had rooms on the 18th floor of the St. Regis, all engaged for a quiet sleep on the top of the world. I called Frank when I got in, and he said in his little easygoing way, We've just gotten the all-clear signal. Everything's all right. Well, somehow, it meant nothing to me. I'd been hurrying so hard and fast that I said, Oh, really? Well, I'm going to Macy's, and we'll meet you at the hotel at 5. Then I called Libby, whom I haven't seen since she married Jack. And imagine my surprise and fright to hear her talking about evacuating town. Having called Spence to get Bertha home, but Spence said they had an air raid shelter already. Glad to hear somebody has, and she seemed horrified that anybody would be in New York who could escape. The planes were sighted in Boston and practically ready to drop on my telephone booth. Well, to make a long story short, I called Frank. We thought we better take cover in Elizabeth, which is just next to the Standard Oil tanks, and is rated as the #1 place for bombs to fall. But as the afternoon passed on, it was plain to be seen that most of New York was unaware of the peril on the radio, and millions were pawing Christmas deals and neckties and rayon underwear in Macy's. And we called home and found all was well, had some cocktails, and were sure there was no danger. Be sure to have a bottle handy. It is a cure-all. And we stayed in town, had dinner at Fifi's Monte Carlo. Gloria Swanson sat next to us, or us next to her. Got up and breakfasted at 10, and came back practically a hero with our friends, and now are ready for the sober life. I burst into tears to think of the heartbreak this will be for all of us before the struggle is ended. I cannot believe it, but I feel that we couldn't escape by sitting here untouched. Oh my, it brings it all home to me as to what is before us, my pet. Looks like we will have a lonely Christmas. Sorry we can't have a family time because such days as these make one realize the joy of being near one's ties. I thought you were darling to write and let us know we were in your thoughts. Heaven knows we will be taking to the hills of Titusville before this is all over. I hate for Frank to be in New York, so near the docks, but then some people think New York is the safest place. What of your oil wells? Write me when you can. Dearest love to all. Maybe a small farm in Iowa? Devotedly, Shiny.
Well, I don't even know what to say after hearing that letter. I do remember at our first season launch, that was a letter that we plucked out just to read live for the audience there. And it was, part of season 2 now. And I've heard it a few times, and every time it just takes my breath away.
Yeah, what a time to have experienced.
Crazy to think a little shopping trip in New York City once again becomes part of a world event in their lives.
Seems to be a theme going on with that. I don't quite understand that.
I think maybe Shiny and Fleur should quit the shopping.
They shopped a lot.
I think this letter is just the perfect example of our view of world events happening in real time, and what it was like in the moment of discovery that we actually are at war. Because it's amazing that, someone jotting a few paragraphs gives us the picture of the then, right now, that changed lives. Amazing.
And I imagine it to be somewhat therapeutic to be able to experience this and then sit down and write about it. Kind of help you process the details of what you had just experienced.
Especially after the cocktails, because I bet you would have been a little shaky beforehand.
Well, and you know what they say is, like, if something's really bothering you, write a letter, whether you send it or not. Write it down.
Get it out.
So to your therapy point, I think that makes really, really good sense. And then the other thing that this really brings out is the war generally was over there, not here. And so this is a first insight into what it would be like if there was war here.
That moment of unsureness.
Right.
And feeling like a target.
Keeps coming back to today and how people are feeling all over the world. And we just know that human beings keep making the same mistakes, it seems.
And then you have dinner next to Gloria Swanson.
Right.
Yes.
That was the other thing. That was great. Oh, the heavy and the light.
Yes.
Very.
Yes. It's the yin and yang of
it's the
Fleur
contrast. Right.
It's too much.
So I wanted to mention that this recent research that we've done for this episode, I've gotten to read letters that Fleur wrote. Now, because it was between Fleur and her husband, Benj, those letters were preserved.
Yes.
And one thing that really intrigued me about it was her handwriting. And just as an aside, I wanted to mention that regarding researching letters, there's something just very intriguing about the handwriting and the differences between the different characters or women who are writing. But what I wanted to mention about Fleur's handwriting is that your handwriting, Anne, resembles hers very much. And there's something really fascinating about that.
Anne just lit up at that.
Yeah,
you can't see her, but she's...
I'm tearing up over that. Yeah, I don't know how mine developed between some sort of cursive print. And I think she was a cursive printer somehow. That's really lovely. Thank you, Betsy, for mentioning that.
Of course.
Well, we do have those letters. And I think one of the things that we decided to do today, as opposed to a sketch, is we're going to read a couple letters between Fleur and Ben in World War II when he was stationed at Miami Beach at the Wofford Hotel.
So I'm going to read letters from Ben now. And Anne, you're going to read
a letter from Fleur.
Now, the dates of the letters could be a little confusing because they're crossing in the mail.
Yes.
And so we're going to read maybe a little bit out of order, but in the more logical sense.
We're just going to say these were June and July of 1942.
Sounds good.
This is to Lieutenant B.F. Crawford, Jr., Hotel Wofford, Miami Beach, Florida, from Mrs. Benjamin Franklin Crawford, Jr. Saturday evening. Dearest, darling sweetheart, I love you so much, and I've been thinking about you every minute since you left, hoping you found someone nice to talk to on the train. Now it's 8 p.m., so I suppose you're settled? I'm counting the minutes until we hear from you, all about your trip down, where you are, and how you feel, if any, about the whole business. Stop by to see about your sweater back from the station. It will cost $4, so I left it. Shiny and Ann were there waiting at the hotel. Shiny sent you her love again and said to tell you again what a marvelous evening they had. Only I agree with you, much too noisy. Went up to Stephanie's at 4:30 with my suitcases, and she came down to the station with me when I left, all of which helped cheer me up. After work, there was an awfully attractive woman at the diner, and we got to talking and found mutual interests. She had received word that day that her husband was graduating from the air training school at Harrisburg this morning and then leaving for Maine, where she will go too. She lives in Gettysburg, but was visiting when the news came. Don't know how long he had been between graduating and Maine. Nancy and Dick and John and Aunt Jay were at the station, and the house felt pretty chilly, but it's warmer now. Katie came home yesterday and was so sorry not to see you before you left. I've told everyone how wonderful you looked in your uniform and how proud I was of you. Also M. Titusville seems very unmilitary after Penn Station. Dick is fine. He played golf yesterday, and I asked him if Dr. Cooper gave him permission. He said he guessed it was okay, for he played golf with him. Also Tom Lowry and John Henney. Can you picture such a combination? He caddied this afternoon. Nancy went to lunch at the club for Joan Everson, who is visiting. Mary Benton is having a luncheon at the club for her Monday poker at the Hamptons. Peg Galloway called this morning to ask about you and said they'd stop for me. Don't want to go much, but guess I will as everyone seems to be out. Couldn't get Anna, so I'll be home early. Still can't believe you are so many miles away. Anyway, our trip to New York was so much fun. I never did have as good a time there as this time. Wish you were going to call this Sunday so I know your address. Do you have a roommate? If so, who? Don't skip anything, as I'm so anxious to know everything. Do hope you'll have time to write a few details. Well, my darling, I hope you know how much I love you and miss you. I do hope we can go someplace with you later, even if we have to live in a tent. Hope you can tell all about your course. Must wash my dirty hands and comb my hair. So good night, dearest. All my love, Fleur. Sunday morning. Your telegram just came. Thank God. So glad to hear from you. Want to get this off with noon airmail. Love and kisses, Fleur.
June 28th, 1942. From the Wofford, on the ocean at 24th, Miami Beach, Florida. To Mrs. B.F. Crawford Jr. and family, 214 Spruce Street, Titusville, Pennsylvania. Saturday night. Dearest family, here I am in the Army again, in Miami, and very hot. Tomorrow we have our first formation at 1:30, and the report is that we start with a 16-mile hike in the Florida sun. But you never can tell about these rumors. As you see, we are living at this hotel, which is just north of the Rooney Plaza. I think Mom will remember that. I have a roommate, Captain LeMay, who Mom will remember as the good-looking man in the station. He is from Duluth and is a former member of the RAF. The hotel is larger and the rooms are nicely furnished, but there's no air conditioning. We cannot have the windows open and the lights on at the same time, which will be very bad for studying. Hope we can get an electric fan. The train ride was uneventful. I got a wonderful sleep, 11 hours from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. Delightful. Miss you all a lot. Much love and many kisses, Dad. From Ben at the Wofford, to Mrs. B.F. Crawford Jr., Miss Nancy Crawford, and Mr. Richard Crawford, 214 West Spruce Street, Titusville, Penna. Sunday. Dearest Fleur, Nancy, and Dick, glad to have the chance to talk to you again this morning. Though your voices sounded so dreadfully far away, still I'm glad you are all well. As I told you over the phone, no further word has come about Fort Worth, but I'm hoping it will arrive this week. There seems to be a kind of unwritten law that no one leaves here in less than 4 weeks, so perhaps they are holding back until that 4th week passed. Yesterday afternoon, we had a sham battle in and around a swamp about 8 miles north of here. We were supposed to be defending an airport, and some airplanes were attacking it. They dropped flour bombs. If you got flour on you, you were dead. They were also supposed to drop tear gas and parachutes, but they didn't. After the battle was over, I don't know who won, we had dinner served from a field kitchen they had set up. Roast beef, excellent. Mashed potatoes, fair. Beans, cabbage, salad, punk. Bread, and beer, grand. We got back between 6 and 7. It was much better than drilling. Nancy, I made a check out to the Wofford for $50. When July is over, please make a list of all receipts and expenses, checks to whom and how much. Use your typewriter and include the balance at the end of the month. The ocean breeze came back yesterday morning, or rather in the night, and I've had 2 good nights' sleep. It's blowing so hard today I can hardly hold the paper to write, but I don't mind so long as the breeze is here. Nancy and Dick would love the waves today. I wish Washington would decide about this Fort Worth business. I don't like the suspense. One class graduated here yesterday and another came in, so we are now the senior class. Where and with whom is Dick going to camp? You're certainly having a camping summer. There doesn't seem to be anyone else from northwestern Pennsylvania here in any of the classes, unless someone came in with the new class yesterday. Have you talked to John Staskill at all about the possibilities of renting the house? What do you think about it? More later. Just back from a little auto trip with the LeMays. We went over to Miami, then to Coral Gables, and back to Miami, where we had dinner in the pink and green bamboo room at the Columbus Hotel. Remember it, Fleur? We all had very delicious pompano. It was the first time we've been off Miami Beach since we arrived 4 weeks ago. Coral Gables didn't look any more attractive to me than it did a year and a half ago, and it was certainly hot over there. Much more breeze here. Much love and kisses to you all, my darlings. Dad. From the Wofford to Mrs. B.F. Crafford Jr., Miss Nancy Crafford, Mr. Richard Crafford, 214 West Spruce Street, Titusville, Penna. P.S. Where are my airmail stamps? Sunday. Dearest Fleur, Nance, and Dick. Just got Mom's letter written on Friday, but did not receive a letter from anyone written on Thursday. I wonder if it got lost. Please let me know because I do not like to have my mail lost. I think the mail handling down here is not too adroit. Anyhow, glad to hear from you today. I had a very good steak dinner at the Officers Club last night, and then went with Captain and Mrs. LeMay to see This Above All with Tyrone Power and Joan Fontaine. She was very good, but I'm not crazy about him, and the movie was hardly the type I would select. However, it was a pleasant diversion. Today started out very hot, but the breeze has come up, and it is very nice here in the room. I slept in this morning till 9 o'clock, but woke up at 5:30 just the same, then went back to sleep again. Dick, I carefully packed the Shave Master in funny papers, which you will be able to read if the box is unwrapped with a little care. Yesterday, I sent you all, from down on Lincoln Road, a package of jellies and marmalades of various sorts. Thought perhaps you might like them, and if there are any you particularly like, let me know and I'll send more. I still received no further word from Frank. Seems peculiar that he would write the one letter if he wasn't going to do anything more about it. You seem to be having a swell time at your favorite Van Buren. I'm glad. What did you finally do with Judy? The poker letter said there has been a golf match with Warren. How in the world did that ever happen? I thought Warren had given up golf. I've decided that the old hard case will do me for a trunk. Please find the keys. They have to be in a key box, top drawer, under shelves, west wall of the billiard room. Have the trunk, or whatever you call it, marked Lieutenant B.F. Crafford Jr. 0909371, and have it shipped to me here by express prepaid. The thing I'm asking about is the one Dick measured. And send the tray, but don't send it if you can't find the keys. Well, goodbye, folks. We'll write again at the first opportunity. Miss you all a lot. Love and kisses, Dad.
I love these insights of his life there, and the fact they wrote every day to each other.
I know, and they're missing one letter, and where is it? Is the mailbag? I mean, can you imagine?
Yes, because that's how we text now.
Yeah, we missed a text. I didn't see your text. What? You sent it?
And I read the letter as him being a little miffed about it, that he missed
Yes.
that. He missed that letter. And
He
what
did.
happened to it?
Yes.
And then the whole written on top of the first page was, and where are my airmail stamps?
Yeah,
He felt a
exactly.
little grumpy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why
He's
not?
hot.
Yeah.
He's going 16
Absolutely.
miles through
Should
the
I
bog.
reread it a little more grumpy? Or
Yeah,
should
absolutely. Add the grump factor,
Add the grump.
please.
I love reading these because they're ordinary. It's the way of communicating in the time.
And it's so current because it's every day.
It's every day. And was it hard to make calls for some reason? Because
Yes.
it's kind of in training and stuff, or just in general?
Oh, he only had phone time Sunday mornings, maybe at 5 o'clock in the morning. No, they were very regimented. And these
That would be
letters,
hard.
these letters were lifelines on both sides.
And long distance was a different matter back then, right?
Mm-hmm. It was a big deal.
One of the fun things in here, too, was the fact that one of the items that he definitely enjoyed
Was grand.
was grand,
It
was the
beer and the bread.
and that was on site after their exercise at their little war that they had. So I'm going to call John now, but first I want to just give our audience a little background on John. Again, John Gurda is a Milwaukee-born historian. He's been studying Milwaukee since 1972. He's the author of 23 books, including histories of the Milwaukee area neighborhoods, industries, and places of worship. His most ambitious effort is The Making of Milwaukee, the first full-length history of the community since 1948. And he also wrote Milwaukee City of Neighborhoods, which is a companion to that book that has quickly become the standard work on grassroots Milwaukee. And The Making of Milwaukee was the basis for an Emmy Award-winning documentary series that premiered on Milwaukee Public Television in 2006. So in addition to his work as an author, John is a lecturer, tour guide, and longtime local history columnist for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. A common thread in all of John Gurda's work is an understanding of history as why things are the way they are. So with that, we're going to give John a call.
I'm excited to meet him.
Me too. I'm a fangirl.
Good morning.
Hello, John. This is Doug Martinet. How are you?
Just fine, just fine.
Good. I'm here with Ann Goodwin and Betsy Schmeeken.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good.
Hey, John.
Hi.
Welcome to Meet Me at the Wall, John. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. You know, this is season 2 of a podcast that started out really with this collection of letters written to Ann's grandmother for decades. And we've just had so much fun, Ann and Betsy in particular, doing all the research, learning about history through the letters. The letters are literally guiding them to historical events, to personal family events, and all of these wonderful things. And I'm learning so much just as a friend going along for the ride.
Season 1, we focused on the 1920s. And my grandmother was a Sweetbriar College student and had a group of women girls at the time, who were her friends. And we have a photograph of them on the wall, which is our cover art. And Betsy and I have enjoyed identifying the women on the wall and finding generations beyond them. So we're now good friends with a 92-year-old, a son of one of the women on the wall, and
Frankie.
a 90-year-old woman. And so we've had this wonderful joy of discovery. And wonder for you, in your process, how many tangents a day do you go down when you start with this process? Is it organic?
Sure, you kind of follow your nose, which does take you down rabbit holes, absolutely. But kind of finding letters, if you're dealing with sort of the 30,000-foot view of history, kind of whether it's a neighborhood or an ethnic group or a city or the country, that's it's easy to kind of round off the rough edges. But letters, those primary sources are really invaluable in terms of giving you the immediacy kind of what life was like during any given period. And that's for me. My background is Polish on my dad's side, Norwegian on my mom's, and my mother was raised in a farm out in Coon Valley, Wisconsin, and there's a relative out there, the Ophus family, who were brothers-in-law with my great-grandfather, and before my great-grandfather came to America, they corresponded, and John Opus saved these letters, so they're in Norwegian, which my mom could translate, and I have them. They're on the rag paper of the time, which you could almost kind of use for a washcloth. Stuff is so robust, but it's just fascinating talking about work as an itinerant carpenter in Norway, working building railway stations and leaving his kids at home, for days or weeks at a time, and kind of pondering going to America, and the line that that sort of stands out for kinder, for the children, and they did. So they came back here and came in, I think, 1887 or so, late 1880s, and here I am. So it's kind of there is kind of a pretty tangible connection when you have those, as for you when you have those close family ties.
That's when the letters that I have in my possession are in the late 1800s. So we talk about going through history in real time. What we've experienced, the Spanish flu and the Roaring '20s and World War I and the Great Depression, World War II, all of that as it's happening.
Mm-hmm. No, you have this archives. Will there be a publicly available, kind of a state historical, county historical, kind of those would be of value, I think, to scholars.
Yes, I can't bear to part with them yet, but they do have their own office.
Copies are fine.
Oh, no. There's too many.
Well, it could be a big
really?
digitizing effort.
Oh, no.
Well,
sure.
Dream no small dream. So they fit, John, in a copy paper box or something like that, a moving box.
Okay.
But there's just so many. But it is a cool archive.
Yes, I do intend to donate them to the Historical Society where my grandparents lived.
In Titusville, Pennsylvania.
Titusville, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Well, good for you. That's because those sources are, for people like me, those are really, really important.
And for me, I've heard you, John, over the years, speaking at events and on some podcasts and what have you, and I've heard you describe history as storytelling. Mm-hmm. And so when I think of what Anne has done with these letters versus just researching them and looking up historical events and learning, Anne has also written, I'll call it historical fiction, because there's little bits of fiction in there, but there's a lot of fact in these stories as well that Anne has written that we're reading as we go throughout this podcast.
So it's interesting. It's not her writing because they're all letters written to her, but she saved everything. I just found, personally, I absorbed so many characters, events, and I had to spill them out because I couldn't absorb anymore. So I created these scenes.
Oh, good for you.
Now that we're in the 30s and 40s, we've been going through the Depression in the first few episodes of this season, and we're arriving at the World War II era now. We're in 1941. Could you help us set the stage a bit, John, for towns like Titusville would have been a lot smaller than Milwaukee, but in everything you've done about Milwaukee or just the history in general, this transition from the Great Depression to World War II and what it was like for people of different classes?
Certainly, there was that 15-year period from 30 to 45. That was one of the most abnormal times in American history. You go straight from the worst depression in the nation's history to a global conflict. I mean, that's some large scale change, transition, and dislocation. So 41, the depression was still, began to ease. 33 was the worst year, and then things began to get a bit better. There was some sunshine, 38, 39, but then there's kind of a dip, kind of a recurrence, I guess. And then the war starts in 39 and in Europe, and Hitler invades Poland in September. And then you have the defense industries just ramping up. I'm not sure what Titusville's economy is, but Milwaukee's was very, very industrial. So that, and nationwide, the stimulus to manufacturing provided by Allied orders was really important, kind of in bringing the economy off the mat. So then you have September 39 is when the conflict begins in Europe, and then December 7th, 41 is when Pearl Harbor's bombed and we jump in. So you move from privation to gnawing anxiety, kind of about the future of the world, certainly, but also of loved ones. There are hundreds of thousands of people, directly involved and in harm's way, and lives lost, obviously, as well. So it was a very, very, very insecure time. And for wealthier families, I recall doing industrial histories here, talking to a family who owned a company And I asked about the Depression, and they said, well, we didn't buy a new car that year. I mean, that was kind of the, they're certainly feeling the impact. But for people who were working class, unemployment in Milwaukee topped out at around 40%. So you have people who were, and about half the population, the term they used was outdoor relief, but it was these bulk commodities of rice, beans, flour, rough fish, potatoes, things that were, I guess, with more later terms for government surplus. And you'd pull your coaster. That was the term that was used. And it wasn't just Milwaukee. So you take a coaster wagon and go to the nearest outdoor relief station, they were sort of brick and mortar. They were storefronts or other kinds of facilities that were taken over by in Milwaukee's case, the county. And they'd load up with bulk commodities and take those home. And that was you're kind of on the edge. At least a mild revisiting of that now with the shutdown and food banks, threats to food security certainly going on today, sort of a distant echo of what was going on there. But that was extremely hard times.
And I want to just comment that my grandfather did serve in World War II. And World War I, which is very interesting of their generation. He writes his first letter, "Here I am in the Army again." So their lives were extremely disrupted.
Sure.
And
definitely, yeah.
Hearing his stacks, they wrote every day. So I have World War II letters from him serving in the Army Air Corps as an officer. So it hit everybody.
Well, that's, in his case, unfortunate timing to be in both conflicts. That was, I'm sure he served with honor and certainly interest, but that's a long time to be away from home.
Yeah, a 19-year-old ambulance driver in France, and then a man saying goodbye to his young children and wife to re-up. So
he have volunteered then for World War II? He wouldn't have been drafted, or would he have been required to come back because he was an officer or something?
I think as time went on, I don't know the exact number, but there was a limit, 35 or something like that, where draft did not reach, into that age group. And that changed as manpower needs, manpower, woman power, but as manpower, they weren't drafting women. As the need increased, the age kind of, I think, crept up as well. Do you recall, Ann, whether or not he was that a volunteer or draft?
Well, he would have been just under 35. He was born in 1901.
Okay.
And it might have been his nature to choose to serve again. I can do some research on that.
He actually would have been over 35.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's my math skills.
That fascinates me. That is really amazing that he served in both world wars.
Yeah, that would certainly be unusual for his age group. That age group, that being kind of in harm's way twice, that's certainly exceptional.
The descriptions of the Florida heat, bogs, what they did on the beaches in full uniform.
In training.
Training. That was one of the tangents Betsy went down recently, and pictures of these men in full gear and full blazing heat.
And Betsy, they stayed in hotels, right, down there?
Yes, they did. They needed space, obviously. And I'm trying to imagine right now everything that needed to happen in terms of infrastructure changes when the war was beginning. And this idea of needing space for training and finding these hotels and converting them into spaces for trainees. It's mind-blowing to me that all of this happened. And
5 hotels on Miami Beach.
Right.
They went from glitz
to serving their country.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of it was certainly the civilian infrastructure in terms of housing, feeding, supplying, the military, but also in a lot of ways, America became a socialist economy in those years because you had to have some kind of overarching responsibility to run all this stuff, So then that was the federal government. So it was requisitioning supplies, taking over the railroads, the troop transport, and the priority. So it was in Milwaukee and perhaps in Titusville, the employers there, if anybody was doing manufacturing, pretty much the production of anything civilian just ended. I think the number of cars produced in America during the war was, it was minuscule, maybe hundreds, if that. And these companies in Milwaukee have Alice Chalmers, did work for the Manhattan Project. More equipment by weight than any other company in the country. So they had to kind of switch gears, in the case of some companies, literally, for military production, and anything that had been part of their stock and trade early on was mothballed. It was just changed. And in Milwaukee's case, the manufacturing capacity here doubled. So it was really, the economy was geared almost exclusively to the war effort, and that was a huge change. And the government would have they would do cost plus 10%, and then so these weren't bid. They just said, no, we need this. We need LST gears for tanks. We need howitzers from over here on not too far from my house in Bayview. Over here at Norberg, they made howitzers, torpedo tubes over at the Norberg plant. So you have this disruption of supply lines and this concentration on everything for the military. It was a sea change. And then they had this process called renegotiation that would drag on for years after the war, where they would have these, I guess it'd be forensic accountants, trying to figure out what the actual cost had been and allowing at least a small measure of profit for the corporations. It was a major shift for everyone in the country.
When did these measures begin? We entered the war in 1941. Were we prepping for it before then?
Absolutely. There was, in World War I, they called it preparedness, and that was the prelude to us jumping in 1917. But there was, because we were allied with what you think of as the NATO countries today, and we were not being bombed. We were not being invaded. There was no blitzkrieg here as there was in London. No, France was occupied. We weren't. So we're the obvious, kind of the giant that kept, this bridge of ships, they called it, between here and Europe, keeping material and supplies coming for the Allies. And then you have the U-boat menace, and then you have countermeasures of the sub-chasers. It was, kind of these strategic one-upmanship kind of going on in the seas and on land. So yeah, absolutely. And they weren't calling people up yet. They weren't training soldiers. My dad was, at that time, he was out of school. He graduated from UW as a chemical engineer, but he was working for, I think at the time, he was working for Caterpillar in Peoria, Illinois, doing engineering, sort of more agricultural machinery kind of things, mills for extracting oil from soybeans and so on. But he'd been in ROTC at UW-Madison, and he was early on, I think I'm not sure exactly when he mustered in. My brother knows all the military history, but I think in 42, he was gone. He was off to training and ended up finally in Iwo Jima, commanding a troop of a company of chemical warfare, soldiers, flamethrowers, stuff he wouldn't talk about. So it was certainly all kinds of trauma to go around.
My grandfather mentions attending a chemical warfare class in Florida. Mm-hmm. And we have a photograph. Betsy did a dive and found a photograph of that class. Where they're learning about the chemical warfare.
Well, my dad wasn't too far away. He was in the Bahamas. That was his first, which sounds sort of idyllic, but it was a defensive position, and it was never invaded. So he got bored. His men got bored, and he couldn't. Being from Wisconsin, the lack of the change of scenery, or rather seasons, drove him nuts, and so he actually requested a move, ended up at Officer Canada School in Leavenworth, Missouri, or Kansas, Missouri, I think, and ended up meeting my mom. So, again, here I am.
I love this. Even you, John, the stories are what make up history. It is really fascinating that we're just talking about this, all things that we have personal knowledge of. And the letter in particular that we're focusing this episode on is this letter from December 12th, 1941, from Anne's grandmother's best friend to Anne's grandmother. Did you get a chance to read that, by the way?
I did. And the air raid?
Yes.
Air raid warnings?
The air raid warnings.
That was a surprise to me.
Really? Cool.
Yeah, in New York City, yep.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming there weren't any in Milwaukee during World War II.
No, but there were. They would do these practice blackouts, and at a certain time, downtown would go dark. So it was, I guess, learning from what they're practicing in Europe, especially in London, with the German bombers and the V-bombs coming over. So it was kind of preparedness that turned out not to be needed, but yeah, that was something that was going on here. But it sounded like there was in the letter. It sounded like there were reports or fears or rumors of actual enemy aircraft overhead.
Off the coast of Boston, I think, headed New York way, possibly.
It didn't happen apparently. So you don't hear about New York being bombed.
No. And Shiny and her husband got to have cocktails.
Yeah, right. With Gloria Swanson.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. This is the sort of the yin and yang of stuff that you just...
Yeah, right.
Life goes on.
It made it sound, too, as if, this was... Not everybody was paying attention. Not everyone even knew, that there was warnings going on, which I guess is not that surprising.
Yeah, how much awareness, daily awareness is the question. It seems like we all try to keep living our lives in the midst of despair.
Right.
And in today's 24/7 news cycle, you can't get away from every detail of everything happening all around the world unless you put some effort to avoid it.
Yeah,
but back then, you had to seek the information.
Yeah.
That's right.
You had to turn on the radio. I think she mentioned she didn't turn on the radio before she left, so she didn't know what was going on.
It did not have something in her ear all the time.
But John, the really funny story from season 1 is Shiny and Flo were in New York the day the market crashed.
Again, totally unaware. They're shopping endlessly all day. My grandmother got a call from my grandfather, and she said, "Oh, I got the most beautiful coat." And he's like, "Return the coat."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We have the letters to prove it.
That's something else. Is I guess from the standpoint of sort of chronological distance, things seem like, of course, everyone knew that, but they didn't. They didn't. In Milwaukee's case, even after they knew the news, they knew the stock market crashed, but it took a while. And Milwaukee was relatively diversified, so there wasn't enough health in enough sectors, so the depression came here later. And there were I've done this. A couple of histories talked about as late as 1930. You have industrialists saying we're going on ahead as ever, and we're expecting the best year in our company's history next year. So these things are sort of, you look back now, it's kind of whistling past the graveyard. But it took a while for things to really kind of have kind of a saturation in the economy and in society.
It's so interesting, the parallels of today. It seems like things going around and all of us keeping on, and where we're going, we don't know. And it just seems we have to learn from this past that we discover.
And we're going to take a little break here and continue this fascinating conversation with John Gurda in the next episode, episode 5. Look forward to seeing you next time, and thanks for listening. Meet Me at the Wall is hosted by Doug Martinet, Ann Goodwin, and Betsy Schmeeken. Music is written and performed by Alex Vance. This podcast is copyright by Pleasurable Pause Press. Thank you for listening, and we hope you tune in again next time.